We've grown very familiar over the last week or so, if not over the last few years, of the faces of Sukumaran and Chan, the two ringleaders of the Bali Nine who are facing the death penalty right now. I think my thoughts on that are pretty clear. They deserve to suffer in that prison, but they certainly should not be getting the death penalty. Tony Abbott has talked about it in the last 24 hours. He won't confirm whether we will withdraw our ambassador from Indonesia should these deaths go ahead, which is what Brazil did, which is what the Netherlands did. Will we do the same thing? He's against the death penalty. He's fighting it like crazy, but you get the feeling there is only so much that he can do. It'll be a heartbreak, this thing. Just think of the families of these guys. I know they don't get a great deal of sympathy, but I just get the feeling, and I've been writing something for the Daily Telegraph, I think it's going to appear this week, but I just get the feeling that the world has started to turn these two into decent human beings, finally. You know, they did an evil thing, but they've finally started to turn into decent human beings, and then we go out and shoot them. What the hell do you get out of something like that? There's a very good letter in the Daily Telegraph today. The founder of the Family Drug Support Centre is Tony Trimingham. And Tony lost his son to heroin at the age of 23 in 1996, but still finds it in his heart to say that these men should not be put to death. It's a good letter. I urge you to have a read of it. But Tony's on the line too. Hi, Tony.
How are you, Justin?
Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me. Good on you for raising this. If you don't mind, I know these things must hurt unbelievably, but can you tell me about your son?
Oh, yes, I don't have any problem talking about my son. He was 23. Ironically, it was his birthday the other day. It would have been 41. And, you know, like the first few years when you lose somebody, it's just the pain and anguish, the memories and the dreams and everything. Now it's kind of what would have happened. And, you know, it's a different kind of pain. But it doesn't go away, and it won't go away until the day I die, of course. It'll be with us forever, and that's my point about the families of these two guys. Notwithstanding the fact that they have turned themselves around and apparently doing good work now within the prison, I always felt that the families of these people were the ones who were suffering the most and will continue to suffer after they've gone. We've become quite friendly with Lee and Chris Rush, whose son Scott was on death row for a while.
Yeah, now life in prison. Yeah,
and I know, you know, just talking to them, what they go through, what they've been through over the last however many years it is, and you know, Scott's no longer on death row, which is a relief in one sense, but faces a long time in prison. He'll never really have a proper life. And some will say, well, that's justified because of what they did, and I'm not going to get into that argument, but certainly the death penalty is something that I don't think anybody in Australia should really countenance, and we should fight as hard as we can to prevent it. Not that I have a lot of hope, I might tell you.
No, I don't. The people that I talk to don't have a great deal of hope either, Tony, whether they be in the government or they're the barristers for these guys. I still have that overwhelming feeling, Tony, that we've just turned them into human beings. You know, we've got them straight. Well, you know, one has gone towards religion, the other one has gone to art, but their lives have moved beyond selfishness, and they're now thinking about other people. And
but I you know, I think they were always human beings. I think they were stupid young men who did something incredibly detrimental to themselves and to everybody else. But in a way, that was my son, you know, like he had the world at his feet, and he did something stupid because he was a young man and he thought he was invulnerable, and he thought that, you know, this was something he would be able to survive. And I guess these guys all did the same. Some of them have turned themselves around more than others, and you hear reports of what's going on in the prison. Some of them seem to be in negative activity, but these two particularly are doing something positive. And I suppose the point I want to make is, what's the point of killing them? It doesn't stop drugs. No. It doesn't stop drugs even in those countries where they come down so hard. You know, Singapore's got the hardest regime in the world when it comes to drugs, but they still have plenty of drugs, and they still have people willing to market them. So it's a pointless exercise.
There are a lot of people in Australia, Tony, though, that cheer for the death penalty. I still think if there was a referendum on it, we'd probably get about 60, close to 70% of people would support the death penalty. Probably not for drugs, but they would support it. Do you think that most people actually have an understanding of what it is?
Yeah, look, I don't think they do. I certainly don't think anybody who supports the death penalty for these guys has ever had anybody involved in the issue. You cannot possibly know until it's happened to you. The death penalty, you know, I was anti the death penalty before my son got involved in drugs. I remember reading a book and watching a film called In Cold Blood by Truman Capote, where the first part of the book outlines the hideous crimes that these people did, murdering a family. Yeah. But then the state-sanctioned murder of the two guys who did it, which in many ways was just as brutal. And then, you know, in Britain, where I come from originally, there were some very clear cases where people were put to death when they didn't do the crime. And we know that that certainly happens in the States. So I'm anti the death penalty. I think you're right. I mean, in the Telegraph today, there are 5 letters. I'm the only one who's anti the death penalty. Yeah. The other 4 are very, very solidly for it.
A little irony here is, you know, in that you're the one that lost your son.
Absolutely.
And you're the one who's against it. Yeah. Enough death, Tony. Enough death.
Enough death. And look, I say I'm without hope. I hope I'm wrong. I think we should do everything in our power to stop it. But I'm also thinking for the future.
Yeah.
I've been embarking on a lot of stuff in regard to drugs and drug law reform, and I don't think I'm ever going to see any of it in my lifetime. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't start advocating and start talking about it, because, you know, 30 years ago, homosexuality was a crime, and you go to prison for it. Now we've changed attitudes on that. Mental illness, we used to lock people up and put them in asylums and forget about them. We've changed our attitudes on that. You have to start the debate, you have to start the discussion, and you have to stand up for what you believe.
Yeah, the strong penalties still need to be there for drug dealers, though, don't they?
Absolutely. I'm not anti. You know, I think these guys needed to face repercussions for what they did, and especially when it's in an Asian country where you know that the penalties are very, very harsh. So I'm not saying anything about that.
Sure.
It's the death penalty particularly.
Tony, thanks very much for chatting to me, and well done on putting pen to paper.
Thank you.
That is Tony Trimingham, who's the founder of the Family Drug Support Centre. Lost his son at the age of 23 in 1996. A couple of weeks ago, he would have been 41 years old. His birthday not that long ago, and Tony says no to the death penalty. Coming up, 1332, your calls, but also Reverend Christy Buckingham, who's Christy spent a bit of time in the prison in Bali talking to these guys. I'll have a talk to the Reverend not too far away.